Most people grew up playing with Lego, and I was also one of them. But before I played with Lego, I played with Playmobil. Lego has had numerous movies in the past, and the Lego movie became one of their most popular ones. The same can also be said for Playmobil. They've released quite a few, and they released one in 2019, which unfortunately got panned by audience worldwide. But 10 years earlier, in the glorious year of 2009, they created a film titled Playmobil The Secret of Pirate Island. And I remembered seeing this movie advertised on one of the in Clouded with Chance of Meatballs. And it wasn't a movie that I initially thought it was, but except a game type slash movie. So it's technically a game, but it also had a story mode to it as well. And when I was young, I used to prefer watching the story mode version because when I first seen it advertised on the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs DVD, I was actually expecting a film. In other words, I think it's about time we do start talking about the film itself. So let's get started. The film opens up with our two main characters, Amelia and Jack, playing in the house until eventually going upstairs to the loft, and where they find all these cool stuff. And the imagination gets the best of them because they end up going into the world of the pirates. They eventually run into the captain of the ship, who was played by Scott McNeil, which I was surprised to find out was the same guy who also played the bad guy in the second Scooby Doo film. But anyway, the kids did embark on their adventure alongside the pirates to a place called Skull Island, where they meet some very wacky characters such as a talking head, a voodoo guy, and an army of skeletons. Now here's where the story gets a bit strange. I've mentioned before that this is both a movie but also a game, and it did have this ending where the voodoo guy brings out a key and a feather, and you're meant to pick either one in order to defeat the skeletons. If you pick the key, then you have a battle with them, and if you pick the feather, then it makes the skeletons revert back to their original human form. While it is refreshing for the heroes to break the curse and see what the skeletons look like in their original forms, I always preferred picking the key bit because that's where the big epic battle comes along, a lot of slapstick going on, and I just felt entertained watching it. One thing that I would also like to talk about this film would be its advertisement. I remember seeing it advertised on the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs DVD menu alongside many other films. And this was way back in the year of 2013 before the film came out in 2009 and I watched it in 2013, and then years later I forgot about it, but then it's all of a sudden started coming back to me, and then I watched it on YouTube and tried to see if I could find any reviews, but to my surprise I never saw a single review of this film on YouTube. In fact, the only place that I could think of that had a review of this film was on IMDb. And to my surprise, there was only one review. The question is, have people truly forgotten about this film slash game, or is it still in their heads but they just prefer not to talk about it? Well, it's about time someone sheds light on the film, and that's why I'm going to be reviewing it. So let's get to it. If I haven't established this before, the two main characters are Amelia and Jack, two siblings with a wild imagination. Amelia is the oldest, but is also very anxious, while Jack is the youngest, and he's very outgoing, he's very mischievous. And come to think about it, these two kind of remind me a bit of my younger cousins. You know, you've got the little brother and the big sister. One's more calm and one's more mischievous. But even though Jack and Amelia go through all sorts of trouble along their adventure, Amelia becomes less anxious and actually overcomes her fear of heights, whilst Jack learns to become a better brother and to be less careless of his actions. Next up, my second favourite characters would have to be the band. Now, these characters do appear very randomly with throughout the film, and even though they don't really serve that much of a purpose to the overall plot, their songs are actually very catchy. In fact, no, I take back what I said about them not serving a purpose. I mean, they actually do serve a bit of a purpose all the way, like, in halfway through the film. It's where they, like, tell a story about how the skeletons came to be. You know, how they got onto the island, how they became skeletons and stuff, and yeah, all of that. So yeah. And if any of you haven't had the chance to listen to these songs or have never heard them before, I do recommend checking them out. I mean, they're very well put together. They're very kind of nostalgic. I mean, I do feel very deep nostalgia listening to them. And yeah, I do recommend checking them out. So if you haven't listened to them before, go for it. The film was animated with 3D computer generated animation, and it's actually alright. It's not the best looking animation I've seen in comparison to other films, but it's nowhere near the level of bad as say something like Trollland. It's even for 2009, it is still surprisingly good animation. The film itself isn't terrible, but that's not to say that it's flawless. I think the thing we should start off first is the humour. Now, despite it being a kid's film, the humour back then, watching it as a kid, it was actually alright, acceptably funny, but as an adult, it doesn't really stick well as it used to. But it's still charming nonetheless. And there is some genuinely funny jokes here and there that, even to this day, still leave me chuckling. Now, I have briefly talked about the animation part, and yeah, the animation doesn't look nearly as good as most animated films that came out at the same time as this film. But it's not the best looking animation. It can get ugly from time to time, but you can definitely tell that the creators who made this did put a lot of care and effort into the film, because there's a lot of shading, there's a lot of the characters move the way the way they're supposed to, and the songs sound brilliant, and hell, even the kids sound like real kids. In some pieces of media, they would have child characters with confirmed ages, despite them having the voice of a 20-year-old and having like regular conversations like one as well. But this film didn't just make them, speak like real kids, but also let them act like real kids, and that's so in other way, it's very real. It's a really realistic film. Now, besides the movie itself getting most things right, I'd say the biggest problem I have with it would be the story and the action scenes. The film does have, no, don't get me wrong, the film does have a few action scenes within it, but I wouldn't say they're as epic as something like Clutch Powers. And even when there is an action scene, especially when the pirates are fighting with the skeletons, they'll often like have a few punchlines in it. And even though some of them can be hysterically funny, I don't think it really ages well, looking back at it as an adult. Now, I do feel like I'm lying to you because Clutch Powers does do a similar thing with its fight scenes, but I'd say the difference with Clutch Powers is that it takes it more serious for the most part, but and even looks more epic, if you know what I mean. But I think with Playmobil Pirate Island, it's just set up, it's like half dumbed down a bit to where it like fits in with the child perspective. But even though Pirate Island has dumbed it down a bit and is not as violent or epic as Clutch Powers may be, it's they still take it serious despite having more punchlines. Now, the final flaw that I'd like to talk about would be this part at the very beginning of the game bit. Now, in the beginning of the game bit, the kids get to decide whether to go up into the attic or play outside. And when you pick the play outside bit, they're just outside kicking the ball until one of them kicks the ball through the edge and it creates like a hole inside it. And so they crawl through the hole and it somehow leads them into the land of the Middle Earth. And the movie's mostly consistent all the way through with, just the pirates and that. But this was like the only time the Middle Earth is ever brought up, and it's never seen again. So this is the only bit where it like happens. And there's just no plot to it, so it was just a very random scene. All in all, this film is not perfect, but I would certainly watch it over the 2019 Playmobil film any day. It's one of those movies that me and most other kids have grew up watching, but as I was an adult, I actually thought most people would remember it, but I've never seen any reviews of this film, let alone people talking about it as much as they were talking about things like Clutch Powers or something. Like, when I mention Clutch Powers to people, they all instantly recognise it. but you do get the odd person every now and then who recognises this specific film. It hasn't got the strongest story, but the characters are still likable and the songs are very catchy. So if you haven't seen this film already, I do recommend check it out. And if you liked it, come and tell me about it. If you didn't like it, that's advised as well. That is it for this video. I am Star Invader, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Now get out of here. Show's over.